For today, our job is to review this chapter called Transformations. And how is this transformed at all? It's just a parabola. Well, that's true. Would you agree that parabola has been moved to the left and moved up? Could you write the equation for it, given that the normal parabola starts like this? How do you write the equation for this if it's been moved left one and up one? The left one would be on the inside, and it would be a +1. Up one would be on the outside, and that'd be a +1 also. And pro tip, if you need this to be right, if you're like, oh, this is important, I gotta get this right, you could make an XY chart and try sticking one of these points in there and see if it actually works. See, that's the point 1, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 5 right there. When you stick in 1, do you really get 5? If I put in 1, do I get 5? Yeah, so it works. See how that's a good way to check it? All right. Because sometimes you forget something like it's flipped over and you kind of don't even notice it. And you realize it moved left and it moved up, but you don't realize it's been flipped over. And checking a point like that would work. All right. Now, this is asking about transformations. I want to give you a master list of all the transformations that we could test you on in one problem. We would never have one that's this dense, but I'm going to give you one right now. -2. I'm going to do an absolute value on this one. 4 parentheses x minus 3 parentheses absolute value minus 10. Now this was an absolute value at heart. The parent function, y equals absolute value of x. But do you agree it's been transformed a lot? All right, each of these has a thing. This is a review day, and it'd be good for you to realize which ones you know and which ones you don't know. So why don't you take a second and try, I'll tell you in a minute, try to tell me all the proper names for all of these changes and write them on your paper. You can use abbreviations like V for vertical, H for horizontal, STR for stretch, REF for reflection, and this is a really good note. If you turns out you're wrong, I'll just have you erase it, put in the right answer in a sec. I would want to look this over right before the final. There's all over the place on the final. And if you forget, like, oh crap, I forgot to say vertical or horizontal, boom, you just lost 2 points on the test. You know, some things really lend themselves to like being able to look at the notes right before the test. This is one of those things. Raise your hand if you are done. That's most of you, so I'll start. This is vertical because it's on the outside. If you didn't say vertical for the negative, you lose. Because you can't just say reflect. You got to say what kind of reflect it is. It's vertical reflect. Next up, that 2. It's got to have quite a few names. First of all, yeah, it's a stretch. Yeah, but what kind of stretch? Vertical, stretch. And you have to say how much did it stretch. BFO by a factor of 2. Okay, that 4 there, that's a horizontal, and it seems like a stretch, but it's not. It's a shrink, and a ton of kids will get that wrong because it's counterintuitive. Horizontal shrink, BFO And a ton of kids will get this wrong. 1/4. Raise your hand if you survived that one perfect. Awesome. That one's right 3. And that one's down 10. Those are the only ones that are simple. You know, like down or up is fine. Down 10. Yes?
What order would you do this in?
Excellent question. I should have brought that up too. All right. Now, this one's a particularly brutal one. And we've agreed to try to like not make them this hard for order. But let me give you another one that would be a simpler one for order. All right. Y equals 4 2x minus 8. Now, I think I made that easier. Well, I know I made it easier. There's 3 things. Why don't you give your best guess, and I will tell you in a minute what the right answer was. There are some things that you get to pick on. Like, do you remember me saying that you could start on the inside or you could start on the outside? And this is really bad, but about half the math teachers start on the inside and half of them start on the outside, and both are okay. I feel like I should go over to the outside team only because most of the keys were made by people who use outside first. Okay, but either way works. I think mathematically, logically, you always start problems on the inside when there's nested stuff, so I would start there, but I'll be fine if you start on the inside or the outside. All right, so I'm personally, this time, to try to match up with the keys, I'm going to show you starting on the outside. If I start on the outside, of these 2, there is a right order. And it's not because it goes from left to right. That's not it at all. It's because multiply is before subtract. So, the 4 has to be first. If you start on the outside. If you start on the inside, that's okay. But if you start on the outside, the 4 would have to be first, and that would be a vertical stretch BFO 4. Then you do the right, no, up, no, down, down 8. Okay, then you go, after you've done the outside, well, I guess you need to do the inside. So since I started on the outside, I'm going to end on the inside. And that will be a horizontal, because it's on the inside. It seems like a stretch, so it's actually a shrink. SHRINK. BFO, careful, 1/2 is correct. And that's the order thing. Either start on the inside or the outside. On the outside, do the normal order of operations. If you were on the inside and there was 2 things which we try to avoid because it's so confusing, you'd have to reverse the order from normal. Because they're on the inside, not only is all the numbers are different, the order is backwards too. All right. Okay, that was a really important question, is order, because that's on the test. All right. Do you feel like you got all these down? This is key. All right, then let's move on to other things that you'd have to know for this. How about domain and range? You remember those? When you're looking at a picture, it's not that bad. It's just how far left and how far right does it go. And then for range, the big mistake is range has to be how low first. Like if I asked you for the temperature range, you could in the real world say, well, it was 80 degrees at its highest and 40 degrees at its lowest. But in math, you've got to go with the lowest number first. Okay. So would you please write the domain and the range for this one? Now you may recall that there's a difference between the parenthesis and the bracket. A bracket means it touches it. A parenthesis means it can't touch it. Claiborne, what's the domain? Yes, except I'm going to ask you to tell me it this way. Because on the test, I think it says that it has to be an interval notation.
Negative infinity.
Yep. Correct. And now, in the past, I've allowed you to write INF. We just had a math department meeting about this, and I probably wouldn't be able to mark it wrong on your final because I've in the past allowed you to say INF. I just want to officially go on record. The math department wants you to use the infinity symbol. The only time you should type in INF is if it's onto a Schoology quiz where there is no infinity symbol. Why do we care so much? Because the AP tests. Humans grade the AP tests. And humans are supposed to only accept that symbol for infinity, the sideways 8, okay? So I don't want to get you in the habit of writing INF because you're going to an AP class next year. And this same kind of question could be on an AP pre-calc test. So you can't use INF, you got to use the symbol. All right, next up is range. That's low to high. And it's really easy to by accident go, well, it's at -4. Because it is over 4 spots. No, wait, it's over 5 spots. So you might think that the range uses the -5, and it does not. So I would label these points, and I would then think close. On the range, ooh, it's about the y on the range. So the y value is how high it is. And it goes from 1 to infinity symbol, but there's something wrong there. Kate, do you know what? Bracket on the 1, because it touches 1. Math rewards careful people. Be careful. Double check things like, should I use parentheses? Should I use brackets? Think it through. All right. This is the kind where we have moved a function around. This is apparently the original function. That makes this the new function. Does it look like it got stretched at all? Would you agree it got moved down and left? Then the key is, do you know how to write the answer? No, it's not just down and left, and it's not even just down 3. It's actually down 4. Down 4 and left 2. No, left 1. Down 4 and left 1 would be the wrong answer. Do you know how you write this? Hint, you use the F and you use the X, and then you say what to do to it around the F and the X. So if it really is down 4, -4. And if it really is left 1, wait a minute, I just did that wrong. Down 4 is out here. If it really is left 1, it's right there. Double checking myself now. So that says down 4, and is it really down 1, 2, 3, 4? Yep. And is it really left 1? There's a lot of that with these. You mess up one negative sign, and it's all wrong, or you put it on the inside instead of the outside. Okay, so when you have this weird shaped function that you don't recognize, then they call it f of x. You give your answer like this. All right. What else do we have to know for this part of the test? Well, let's go to the next page. It's saying where to move it. You have to write the equation for that. I'm fine with y equals. Except, wait, it never tells me whether this is like a... Oh, wait, it says a circle. Ooh, I guess we got to remember what circles are. Do you guys remember the standard equation for a circle? Don't say it. If you know it, write it. Write the standard equation for a circle. It's not y equals x squared. Y equals x squared is a parabola. What's a circle? This is one of the most missed tests on the PSAT and the ACT because circles are usually only like one day. And I bet a lot of you forgot. Few of you remembered that it was x squared plus y squared equals r squared. Only like 3 people. All right, write it down. That's the standard circle. Now you have to adjust it according to what they want. 2 to the right. Does that feel like we should mess with the x or the y? X goes to the right. Okay. And the down and up goes with the y. And then the radius goes where the r is. So figure it out. Two to the right would mean I got to replace this x with an x minus 2. Down 5. I know a lot of people get all mixed up on this, but you can check me at the end by typing it into Desmos because some of you aren't going to believe me. It's down 5, and I know you're used to saying minus 5 for down 5, but that's because it's always been on the outside. It's on the inside. It's plus 5. Why? Because it's on the inside. You can't trust it anymore. Doesn't that seem like it's up 5? So it's actually down 5. I know, some of you aren't going to believe me. You want to type that into Desmos, it'll graph it for you, and you'll see. That would move it down 5. And its radius is 8. 8 goes there. Desmos is cool because you don't have to solve for y like you do on a graphing calculator. On Desmos, you can just type in exactly that and it'll just graph it for you. And it would be a circle that has a radius of 8 and has been moved to the right 2 and feels like it's up 5. That's down 5. Okay. You should be able to do this. It's about order, and we already talked about that. And if I do all the problems for you, that's not going to really help you. Now, what about graphing? What if you forgot what a square root looks like, which, by the way, is like that? But let's say you forgot that. You know what would save the day? XY chart. Do you remember the XY charts and you'd pick numbers and stick them in? Like, hint, 0 is a good place to try, but then quickly realize, oh crap, 0 is not good on this problem. What would be good on this problem? 2 would work, or 7 would work, or -2 would work because it comes out to 0 and the square root of 0 is okay. -1 would also work because it comes out to +1 and the square root of 1 is okay. Do you see how we picked those? Because when you actually put them in, it works nice. And you figure out y equals that. And then you can figure out your other points. All right. This is key for this test. There's definitely graphing on the test, which means XY charts. All right. You don't even have to remember what x to the third looks like. Take a second for kicks and sketch it if you know it. Do you remember what x to the thirds kind of look like? If you didn't know by now, check. Kind of looks like that. That's x to the third. So this x to the third got something, then something. And honestly, even if you didn't remember the whole like, oh, it's on the inside, so that's actually a shrink, it doesn't even matter as long as you can do an XY chart. You know, usually if I have to sneeze, I just let myself sneeze. It's no big deal. I sneezed twice this morning and I almost passed out. Because broken scapulas and sneezing don't go together, just so you know. I hope you never find that out. But oh my gosh, it hurts so bad. So I'm gonna like do anything I can to avoid sneezing. Okay, so XY chart, I'm going to stick in anything I want. I want to stick in 0. And I will get half a 0 is still 0, 0 to the third still 0, -2 is -2. And is 1 point enough? No. In fact, we require 5. I know it's kind of a pain, but 3 points even. If I just graph 3 points, are you for sure how it's going to go through those 3 points? No, you probably need about 5 points. So that's what you have to do on the test too. So I don't want to go through this other than to remind you, just stick in any points you want and find 5 of them. like 0, -2. All right. And don't forget the domain and range when you're done. Finding the domain and range without graphing them is really hard. In fact, we don't even teach you how to do range unless you have the graph. So if I ever ask you for range on just like y equals x to the third, you better sketch it because that's the only way you're going to be able to get it. So you'd go, oh, I remember this looks like this, and then I can do the range. Oh yeah, negative infinity to positive infinity. Once you see the picture, domain and range is easy. All right, moving on. What else is in this chapter? More graphing, except you got to write the equation first and then graph it. This one's just stretch your equation this way. See, it's got an f in there. And that's telling you, take your function and do all these things to it. So you got to write the equation. You take your function and you do all these things to it. Put a 3 on the outside of it. Put a negative on the inside of it. You get the idea? You just keep doing what this says. These are like, do these things to square root of x, and you'll get your new function. Okay. This is just about order. We already talked about that. This is just about writing the equation. I think you can do this. You do have to make one function eat the other function. We practiced that yesterday. Ooh, another circle problem. Right away you'd go, not y equals x squared plus y squared equals r squared to do this problem. Domain is like how far left and how far right. Those are still the same rules. All right, let's look at these. Oh, looks like a circle to me. Got a radius of 25? No. What? 5. And then it's been moved to the right 4, and careful, seems like up 1, actually down 1. Remember, these are directions, and it's saying you should do these things to your function. So you take this function and you do all those things to it. Like you put a negative in front of it, you put a 1/2 on the inside of it, and it gets more complicated, of course, but these are like directions. All right. And to the last page. Graph. My first thought on this is XY chart, but these are the directions. It's telling you to do all of those changes to an x squared function. So first thing you got to do is make f eat the g function, and then after f has eaten the g function, which is hard enough, I'll remind you, if f eats g, then that's x squared is f is going to eat the g function. There, that's a reminder of how the f function, this guy, ate this guy. Then they tell you to do some more stuff to it. You know, like there's a negative in the front and then you -2 at the end. Once you finally got your equation, you just got to graph it, which is an XY chart again. See how, if you don't get the XY charts, you're going to die in this section. Okay, and write an equation. We've already talked about these. Vertically shrunk, so that must be on the outside. Factor of a half. If it's shrunk, then I do use the half on the outside. You trust those on the outside. All right. And then these, I think these are the hardest thing, and we have them on the final. There's probably only one. But what I would do is make an XY chart. They gave you the points this time. They told you 1, 2, 3, 4 key points. I would list those 4 points. Let's list them together. -5, 1. -3, 1. The numbers are in kind of a weird spot, but I think that's -1, 4. Do you guys agree? Okay. And 3, 0. So for this, there's really not much more to do except know what the function is. That's your base function. And now I'm supposed to do this to it. Can you trust that that actually is a multiply by 2? Yeah, because it's on the outside, and we trust the outside. Can you trust that you should actually subtract 3 from everything? No. You should add 3. Now that's on the inside. Is that adding 3 to the x's or to the y's? If you're on the inside, is that x stuff? Yes, it is. That is adding 3 to the x's. And then once you have all your points, you graph them. These aren't that hard, but they're definitely tedious. When you're done, you can look at your graph and go, did it really get twice as tall? It should have. It should look a lot like it, except twice as tall, and it should have been 3 to the right. And if you look at your little picture you drew, and it doesn't match up with twice as tall and 3 to the right, you probably screwed it up. You can go back and fix it. All right, there's a good thorough review of this stuff, and I've had done about half the homework. So from here, I would just suggest that you finish those. If you didn't realize this, I was going through something that's a lot like your homework. Let's actually make sure. Pull up your homework for today. I think it was the same as this. Would you look on the back page of the homework and see if problem 18 is the same as this, or is it different? If it,
Read your quizzes.
oh, it's Schoology quizzes. My bad. Okay. So this was a great practice of the stuff that you need to do for your test. But there's 3 Schoology quizzes. I remember what I did again. The circle quiz, since it's on the final and most missed question on a recent PSAT test, which means most Minnetonka kids suck at circles, I made the circle test required because it's only going to be like 3 questions. It's short. So you got to do that one. And of the other 2, can you fairly quickly tell which one I made summative? Not summative, sorry, formative, and the other one I made ungraded? Because I thought it was too much to do 3 things. The circle thing, do it. Of the other 2, can you tell by looking at them and opening them or something? Is it somehow visible to you whether they are summative or formative or ungraded? Does it say or not? All right, so the stretches and shrinks one, she said, is not in the grade book, and therefore that's a hint that that one must be the ungraded one. What's the other one called? Translations and Reflections. Can anybody verify that that's the title of one of your quizzes for today? Okay, do the one called Translations, and do the one about circles. Okay, the other one I made optional. It wouldn't hurt you to do it, but I feel like that was too much homework. So just make sure you get how to do those things too. All right, that's all I got for you for today.